I'm Eric Gibbs with Gambling News. I'm here today with Ben McDonagh, the co-founder and CEO of Green Jade and Arcade Games. Ben has over 16 years in the iGaming industry, working for a number of tier one companies. He has experience in several leadership roles in both operations and casino at Betfair Paddy Power, product management and business development at the Stars Group, and head of gaming at Mr. Green. He's a passionate advocate for the innovation and experimentation that leads to the betterment of the gaming industry, and is now in charge of game development as well as the rest of the business operations for Green Jade and Arcade Games. Ben, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Eric.
Now, I have to start off by asking you, how did Green Jade come to be?
It's a story I love to tell, so I'm glad you opened with that one. So, as you mentioned in the intro, I've been in gaming, iGaming for a good number of years, and I think you get a really good exposure to the different elements of our industry that sort of work well together, and you see some bits that move really fast and some parts of the industry that don't move as fast. And when I was on the operator side, I was lucky enough to work with Betfair, which were a highly innovative company themselves in that they transformed sports betting through the introduction of a betting exchange where players could bet against each other. So my first introduction into gaming was that you don't have to take the norm. There's always an alternative approach to building products and serving market needs. So I got into product management, a few years after being in gaming. And as you mentioned, I worked across a few different businesses, but always on the operator side. Primarily, I had the opportunity to meet with game suppliers, and every now and again, you'd get one that would come along that would look really interesting, really exciting. They'd be doing something different. But I invariably found that the underlying mechanics of the game weren't sufficient in that if they were talking about skill, it was always pseudo skill. It wasn't real skill. There was always a point in the game where you couldn't get any better. There was always the maximum you could win was always the predefined amount. So, I think a few years of experiencing nearly good content gave me the impetus to start looking at it myself. And I was very, very lucky that I happened upon Jesper Scherbrink, who at the time was the CEO of Mr. Green. And he was already working on a game idea before I joined the company, but I quickly kind of got my claws into it and worked with him on some of the early ideas that would allow the game to be significantly differentiated in many ways, in that from the experiential point of view, we allowed the game to be played out with chapters that you could complete. So the idea of having turning the game into more of a fast-moving consumer good and say, we want you to finish this game, move on to the next one. They didn't. Thankfully, it was a good game and they kept playing. But also, that was the first game which introduced skill. So in its most basic form, you could fail to collect your bonus prize, and that money would go back into the game. So that was the creation of the company. It came out of a important game idea, which that allowed us to continue building content. And rather fortuitously, a year and a half later, Jesper and I were able to lead a management buyout of the company and become an investor-backed business, focusing then on building differentiated game content such as arcade.
Very nice. And you're absolutely right. You definitely found a niche that needed to be filled. Now, apart from that mantra that is driving the company, what are some of the primary considerations now when it comes to developing new content? Obviously, you're looking at the skill aspect, but what is it that drives the actual content?
Yeah, this has changed over the years. So when we first built the first versions of our arcade games, we found that we could get a rewarding gameplay experience but they would
Mhm.
make very little money. And suddenly the operators who need to prioritize the content which drives revenue income to them, these games rightly didn't retain any placement. Having come from the casino operator side, I had no qualms about them. Obviously, I'd rather the games were given premium placement, but it didn't justify its positioning, even if the experience for the player was good. So one of the things when driving game design was that we wanted to ensure there was a happy marriage between playing experience, where people felt they had a good value for money, and the revenues that could be generated for the house over a similar time period. So when we're looking at game design now, it's finding that balance. It's finding that interactivity where the player is making all of the key decisions within the game, which influence the outcome, whether it's score that they're influencing or how they win their money, or if indeed they win their money, coupled with a good RTP for the house, and a long enough playing experience. So yeah, it's kind of looking at those elements rather differently to what we've built within our slots historically. So the slots, we could work from other people's blueprints, quite frankly, to be influenced by previous game design. Whereas when it came to building hyper casual social games, it was certainly learning which KPIs were critical to the success.
And of course, as you mentioned, keeping up with them too. I mean, the KPIs that worked a couple of years ago aren't necessarily the same ones that will drive, future growth and interest. So staying on top of that is certainly fundamental to the company's growth. What has been the most popular title you've seen this year so far?
Yeah. So I'll go back a little bit further. Back end of 2020 would have been, we released the last arcade game that we released. So it was Casino Blocks. It's a puzzle game using Tetris style pieces. You've got to place them on the grid, clear lines, and continue placing them successfully to keep wagering. Once we released that game, we didn't go back to the drawing board. We'd learned enough information to say, okay, over 2021, we need to develop out new platform functionality, which allows us to handle bet types differently, but also increase the speed of bets that can be placed depending on certain market conditions. So it might be not a surprise, but Green Jade, we pride ourselves on being the leaders in arcade games based on the knowledge and experience that we have. But our best game, pretty twofold actually. My favorite one is Cheeky Cheshire. It's a game that it's friendly, fun to play, lovely, rich graphical colors in the game, but it's principally it's a 5x3 slot. There's two things I like about it. When you play it on mobile, we change the orientation, so lines, instead of playing them left to right, we play them down the screen. Exactly the same patterns, but it just makes the game fill the screen on mobile. And as you know, more than 80% of gameplay happens on mobile. We wanted to optimize the spacing and the readability of that experience. But the bonus round is what I've found to be has the greatest balance for my own sensibilities. So the hit frequency is low enough that I really feel rewarded when it comes in. And as a gambler, that's what I'm looking for. So I feel we got the gambling part of Cheeky Cheshire right. Outside of that, probably the largest commercial success is Prize Fighter KO. So we went with a really gritty, heavier audio, heavier music themed game with bare knuckle boxers, fighting in illegal underground boxing rings. Nice sort of heavy metal soundtrack, and that one has a bonus round, which is Everwin. So I don't know if you know the concept, but if you win, no matter what your game round result is, your minimum that you win is equal to the stake you had qualifying going to the game, and then if you win more, every resulting bet goes up. That one has just done phenomenally well in terms of turnover and player retention, and I would like to say it's because of the edginess, the grittiness of the game.
Sure, yeah.
It doesn't, it's a little bit too volatile for me. I've never had a win on it that's worth talking about. So it's a little bit too volatile for me, but certainly not for our player base. They certainly keep coming back and put a lot of game rounds through that game.
Certainly sounds like it's working well for you. Now, of course, the COVID pandemic influenced the entire gaming industry, but obviously it also showed what the iGaming market can bring to the industry. How did it impact Green Jade and its plans?
So it kind of didn't. Let's start off by, I don't want to over exaggerate sort of what impact it could have had. So, first of all, we're in an entertainment business. We're very privileged that we're working with distribution of our content digitally. So our customers just still had access to our games. If we'd been the movie theater industry, then we'd have been very negatively affected. So we're blessed to be in the space that we work in. Absolutely. When it comes to how we were affected, we were already a very agile remote business. We had experts working with us in San Francisco, Massachusetts, Ukraine, Noida, New Delhi. We had so many remote relationships that Zoom was already a constant. These business tools, Slack, shared messaging groups, they were natural attributes to our business. So when COVID came along and stayed, it had an absolute negligible effect on us. Now, conversely, we were also too small to see the upside. There were some very large game suppliers who had, hundreds of game titles out there, and they could feel the actual benefit of additional game rounds being played as people had more time on their hands. They're no longer going out to a nice restaurant. They're not taking the day trips to Brussels or Paris. Suddenly they've got disposable income, and they chose to spend some of it on gambling. So that was really interesting from our perspective, that other people were in casino were enjoying this revenue uplift. We're kind of like, oh, is it our turn? Are we going to have a good day? But in reality, we didn't have enough games out there.
Was it responsible for any sudden growth spurt in the company?
It was more a maturation we've had going on for really for the last year. So November last year, we made the decision to move any platform development that we're doing externally to bring it all in-house. We'd proven well enough that we had a very successful, a great potential future ahead of us. Let's not get ahead of ourselves as well. So I made that decision with the board that we would start ramping up hiring internally and bring on some skilled professionals in-house. Having built the entire business with outsourced relationships, it was incredibly exciting to suddenly see the cultural changes that would happen when you do such a thing. Sure. No disrespect to anybody who's working with third parties as developers. I think there's a massive need, and there always will be, for such support networks. But when you've got someone who has bought into the same vision, it makes a transformative difference to the product they go on to develop. They just think about the problems differently. So yeah, it wasn't because of COVID, it was because of maturity as a business. We've gone on to now, I think we've got 32, 33 people in the business full time now. So getting quite sizable.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, that brings me to my next question. As the company expands and grows, finds new targets, what challenges are you currently facing?
Yeah, where do I start? So I don't know if there are challenges of scale. Recruitment is a massive challenge. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, though, because if you care about who you're bringing into the team based on who you've already got, then it really matters about the personality types, the diversity of the applicants coming through. So I think the biggest challenge is ensuring we continue to invest in a workforce that reflects our customer base, but also brings the right personalities to the table. And you can never spend too long recruiting. You're spending time recruiting because it's the right thing to spend time on.
Right.
But I'd say the biggest challenge absolutely has been achieving sort of a scale up after being a startup business. Outside of that, I think people would traditionally talk about regulatory markets, Germany, changing rules, and Netherlands, making changes. That's always been there. This is for me, it's part of the business is change, and you have to hire for almost the worst case scenario rather than the best case scenario. So, unlike call centers where you wouldn't scale up, you wouldn't have enough staff to manage a Cheltenham horse racing festival day all year round. So you'd have to scale up for that. I think when it comes to product development, platform management, you do need to almost have that little bit of fat in the organization, because every day is going to bring a new challenge. So they're probably the greatest challenges. We've been very lucky otherwise with operators and games.
Good. That's awesome. With your interaction with Green Jade and Arcade Games to date, what would you say is your greatest achievement? Either the company's or your personal?
Yeah, awesome question. I think there's many different areas I could focus on. I'm trying to think what would be the greatest achievement out of them. One thing I had no experience of going into this was fundraising, money raising, getting investment, and that is it's not a dark art. It's probably not far off it. It's so much of it comes down to luck. You need to find personalities who believe in the vision, who share your same sensibilities and are on board with it, and are ready to lend advice. Because when you're a very small business, every soundbite is important to sort of help us go in the right direction. So I think being co-leading those investment rounds with my significant lack of experience in doing such a thing, probably one of the greatest achievements. That was years ago, and we've had a few rounds since, and we've been lucky that they've been filled successfully each time. Probably what I would say is going back to the recruitment. It's the finding the people that are willing to jump on to the same ship because they believe in the future. I think it's so easy if you're already a successful game developer. Maybe not easy. I've not had that experience, but I think it's easier if you're in Evolution gaming to go out and recruit talent, because you've proven your success. You're a sure bet. When you come to work with Green Jade, the challenges we're trying to solve, no one solved them before. So it's a little bit more speculative. And you need to have that self-starter approach where it's okay to fail, as long as the learning you take from it ensures that your next attempt is far stronger and far better the next time round. So I'd say, I'd surmise that greatest achievement would be the onboarding and the bringing in of talent to help us create the solutions to the problems we see.
And you're obviously on the right track, because Green Jade is a wonderful company with a lot going for it, and has seen tremendous growth over the past year or so. And so you definitely put together the team that will help drive that success. Where do you personally see the iGaming industry 5 years from now? How different will it be from what we are seeing today?
Again, excellent question, because this is something I spend any waking hour I have practically thinking about this. So we don't need to look back too far to see the origins of the iGaming industry. I think in 1994, microgaming had the first gambling transaction online, which was the same year that the internet had its first e-commerce transaction as well. So as early as money could be spent online buying or selling something, gambling was there. But roll on 25, 26 years later, not an awful lot has changed in terms of the types of games that are out there. But I would argue that the player base has massively changed. They've, myself, it's not just my generation, but younger generations, older generations have gotten access to entertainment in an unprecedented way. They've never had access to, binge on Netflix or watch incredible streamers on Twitch, or watch brilliant content produced on YouTube. Suddenly everyone's a creator, everyone's a content maker, and the access to entertainment, whether it's on TikTok or Instagram, is absolutely unrivaled. We've never seen anything like it in our time. But if you look at the gambling industry, we've stuck to a blueprint that we know works. We've built beautiful table games, beautiful slots, really nice live streaming, but not an awful lot of differentiation outside of that. And I think we're at the tipping point almost of that changing. We talk a lot as a business about the esports industry, the monetization of the esports industry, the video games industry, and hyper casual social games industry. We believe that our company is the perfect blend of these elements. We offer hyper casual social games with gambling. We're investing, you're the first to hear about it, a fair amount into streaming solutions as well, allowing a lot more content creation, curation to happen within our environment as well, which we believe is key to entertainment. It's no longer about that.
Sure,
I'm going to sit here on my own for 3 hours spinning on a slot. Now it's a lot more engaging and hopefully more rewarding when it comes to the entertainment. So I think 5 years time, multiplayer gambling in any which way. I've seen, Robin's got his the slots, playing together, playing slots and betting behind or betting with other players. I think there's some really nice innovations coming around now where there's combination activity happening. And from my time at PokerStars, one thing we observed was that players playing multiplayer blackjack, so not multi-hand but multiplayer blackjack, would stay and play for longer because they would see other people winning, even if they're not winning. So it was incredible to see that experience. And before our chat, you're mentioning how land-based influences online, and certainly when you have a land-based casino, that noise in the background, that jackpot going off, that craps table whooping and hollering, that has a significant impact on my own or anyone else's decision to make another bet. And it's natural that the greater that experience is brought into digital online, it will have a transformative effect on buying decisions as well. So I think the 5 years we're going to see a lot more sharing and sort of co entertainment experiences.
Awesome. Ben, this has been a very wonderful conversation. I've enjoyed every minute of it. I'm looking forward to seeing what Green Jade brings to the table going forward, as well as arcade games. There's so much you're doing. You have your hands full for sure. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No, I mean, I think H1 next year is going to be huge for us. We've got a large suite of arcade games that we've been developing and kind of keeping under the hood for a long while now to have a big launch event. And we've got a few other little surprises coming out with those games as well. So no, I think kind of keep an eye on Green Jade for the beginning of next year. There should be some really, really interesting product releases coming out.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing those surprises and the new content that's coming down the pipe. So thank you for joining us today, Ben. This has been a pleasure. I really enjoyed speaking with you, and I hope everything continues to go the way that you have planned.
Me too. Thank you so much, Eric. It's been great to chat with you.
Take care.
Thank you.